Aloha, everyone. Woo! I'm so excited for today's Lovelight Speaks session. Welcome, and welcome to probably going to be in my top favorites, I guess, for sure. It is none other than my sister, Sonnee, whom I really felt was such a necessary interview to have because of her incredible personal journey of transformation and the depths that she has spanned through her life. It is so inspiring to me and for others who have seen her grow and bloom into who she is today. It was definitely not an easy path, but she's got the heart of a golden lion, and I am so excited to introduce her and to bring her in because her wisdom, her depth of compassion, her presence and ability to hold space for others is truly phenomenal. And I am so blessed that she is a part of my life and that she's literally my best friend. And yeah, I'm really excited for this. So uh, welcome, dear sister, to the Lovelight Speaks series. Thank you again for making this happen, taking the time. I know you're extremely busy. And yeah, I would just say welcome. Thank you so much for supporting me in this and for being here with me and sharing your light and your life path.
Thank you so much. It's a total honor to be here. An absolute honor, a little bit awkward. It's probably my first, well, it is my first like Zoom interview. And I'm very honored to be here. And I thank you for asking me to join you on this amazing thing you do with Lovelight, because I have watched all of your other Lovelight interviews, and when you asked me to be a guest, I was just my heart grew about 10 billion times. So I thank you.
Well, the truth is your journey, your life, specifically the personal details, is awe-inspiring, and you are the quintessential poster child for this, because it's about those who live life and come to a place where they recognize that they have something to offer, and they get out of the way of being in the way of themselves and allow who they really are to shine through. And it's been a long journey, right? But when recently, in the past few years, when we saw the literal light come back through you, and you gained the reins again into your own sovereignty, it was something that I had been holding a torch for my entire life. I never knew whether it was ever going to happen. And, the audience will learn why pretty soon here. But because of the intense amount of self-care and self-love and self-work that you had to do to grab those reins and to become who you are now into this clear, very lucid and interactive state, is in its own an amazing journey, like literally hands down an amazing journey. And I knew that when you reach that level of clarity and presence again, and you were like, I want to live and I want my life to mean something, then I knew that this was going to be, one of the most powerful interviews I ever did.
Well, thank you. My goodness. Yeah, I guess the past of which we speak started very early. I mean, we grew up, of course, in the same house most of the time, at least for the early part of our years. And it was not an easy environment to be in. There was a lot of abuses very early on. Um, and, it's important to know that everyone deals with the same environments very differently. I think a lot of it is truly dependent on your soul and how sensitive and connected you are. And it being such a young age for, some of my first memories of, and I'm going to say, I'm going to have to use some terminology as far as, psychological or psychiatrical even. I pretty much dissociated at a very, very young age because obviously my brain and my soul did not want to participate in what was going on in an early stage of our lives. And so um, I was not the fighter and the rebel that you were in many ways. You were very forthcoming with your opinions about what was going on. And I was a lot more introverted. I took a lot of things inward, and you fought outward with your, with your boxing gloves on, ready to rumble. And so I think that's kind of important to know, because a lot of people experience what we've been through. All the ranges of abuses that are pretty much out there. There was physical, mental, sexual, just verbal. There's so many different styles of abuse that we grew up with, and really, I think psychology is still trying to figure out like how some people become this and how some people become that. But we definitely took very different paths, and my path became very intensely mental illness, if you want to call it that. I kind of prefer to call it a very introverted experience. I felt as though I was still very connected to other realities. And so doctors call that schizophrenia or schizoaffective, or a lot of the different labels that I was given, in my teenage and young adult years. I just call it a safety experience for the most part. I still feel connected in many ways to those other places. I just feel much more integrated into my experience, and I've grown from that integration into a functional person who reflects a lot of truths from that time of my life. And I think it's very important that when you're going through this type of thing, that when you do wake up and decide to participate in life, because I was very suicidal for a lot of years. I was a self-mutilator. I was on a lot of psychiatric drugs that kept me checked out for a very long time. I was institutionalized off and on for quite a while. And I really didn't want to participate in this life. I didn't really feel like I had the tools. I didn't feel like I knew how. I didn't feel like I could escape what was happening in my head. And in my experience, it was also a very volatile existence, even though I may have been sitting there drooling, but I was having a whole other experience going on, somewhere else. And that too became very unsafe and very violent and intrusive. And I've met a lot of people in that place. And I haven't met a lot of people who were able to do what I did by coming out of that space. But reflection was the key for me. Remembering what happened and taking, the lessons, really, the lessons from those moments. And that it was more training, if you will, training me to see things, to see behaviors, to see aspects of people, and kind of work from that point out. So yeah, it's been a long journey.
You know, I
And
think something that you said, really a few things that are really speaking to me now is that, and really important for, others, like you said, to understand, is that souls come in with different tools and capacities to manage, and like we will go through different or same experiences in different ways, and to honor that, to find a way to honor that rather than label it, right? Find a way to work with those different ways rather than, to categorize people as dysfunctional and drug them out. I feel like, what you're speaking of, it's so important for us to start looking at humans as souls, and that, that the landscape cannot be traversed on the same path by everyone. We have to do things that are, in the way true to ourselves. And that was a, that was a fight from the onset. Like, that was a fight from the get-go for both of us. And we did take extremely different trajectories. And it's not that one was better and one was worse. They were just so different. But being siblings, and being the only siblings, and being so close in age, it is phenomenal that we did take such remarkably different courses, and learned through those courses kind of our innate nature, and then how to become functional with that innate nature in life, because both of us, were dysfunctional for quite a long time. And what you're saying, as far as becoming the observer and needing that safe haven, that place of safety, right? Those coping mechanisms that we do to create in our own experience some level of safety, some sort of safe haven. And that is understandable, especially when you're given such intense circumstances from a very young age. Like, we come from light, we come from love. And when we come into certain bodies and experiences, when we're in bodies as a child, we don't get to choose, or maybe we did choose on a soul level, but we don't get to remember that. And so, for you to say what you're saying now about honoring that every soul is different and must take their path in a very unique way. How did you begin? Let's talk about those times where you realized that there was something going on in that dissociative manner, because I know there's so many out there that relate to just needing to check out. And talk about that. Talk about the pros and cons to that. Talk about, the things that you feel is most important about that stage and that phase.
Well, I think it's important to know that I don't think it's a choice that we have. I think it is our bodies kicking in a safety mechanism. I know that it's very common that children that are abused and people are abused, they do tend to dissociate, to detach themselves from the pain that they're experiencing. And so I really don't know if it's a choice, because for me, I don't remember at 4 years old or 3.5 if it was a choice. I just remember the experience changing, and I was no longer in my room, and I was no longer always seeing the family members. I was seeing people I didn't really know, and I had never really seen before, but they appeared to me pretty much like any other human did. But they were comforting and they were nurturing, and they were kind of my cheerleaders, but they were whatever my mind or my experience needed to create to feel like I was going to survive this and that I was safe. And whether that is, a truth to anyone else, it was a truth for me. And so I don't really think it's a choice. I think it's just how we respond to survive in a survival mode. And so, I think because certain abuses went on for long periods of time, I think that even that safe place evolves, especially when I hit my teenage years, because I wasn't super reactive until I hit puberty, I think. And then I think with my body chemistry changing and everything else, I mean, I couldn't focus in school even before that. I had a very hard, I was always, I'm not even sure you'd call it paranoia, but I was always watching the people that were watching me from the window, and um,
Nope, I think she froze. You froze there for a minute with a very interesting look on your face. Watching people
oh
watching me. That was the last I heard, is watching people watching me.
yeah, and kind of interacting with that whole experience rather than interacting with what was actually going on in this world around me. So it was very hard to think about anything else but what I was experiencing there, because it became the dominant existence and experience for me for, I mean, probably more years than not. Even now
Right.
it was the dominant experience. um, and as soon as I hit puberty and started rebelling in a much more outward way, because I think I was cutting by the time I was 11.
Mhm.
I was also drinking to cope. At a young age, I started smoking cigarettes at a young age. Anything I could pretty much do to cope with what was going on. And I was also mimicking the environment around me.
Right.
And so, and, watching others cope, that's how you kind of learn to cope. And so that's, I think, very normal for a lot of people, I think. And then being put on psychiatric drugs made everything about 6 to 10 shades darker, because there's a hopelessness that you feel with labels and psychiatric drugs, and your doctor pretty much handing you paperwork as soon as you're old enough to sign it, saying you're disabled, you're mentally disabled, and you're going to be for the rest of your life. You will never be able to function in society in any normal way for the rest of your life. So just sign these papers, because this is you. This is your future.
Yeah.
And
And
that's a very difficult, yeah, that's a very difficult, that I mean, that's basically the system is saying you're crazy, you have all these labels, and you're never going to get better. So keep taking these drugs so that you won't be a problem. Because most of the drugs I were given was antipsychotics, which are tranquilizers in many ways. They're meant to control your level of energy and your ability to participate, pretty much. And so
right.
it really wasn't until I got off of those. And what's strange was all throughout my life on psychiatric drugs, I kept going off of them, because a voice in my head said, these are poisoning you. These are not good for you. This is poison. They're just trying to poison you, which of course I had pretty intense levels of paranoia, because I think there's a deeper part of ourselves that know that all of this is wrong, all of locking you up, because you're not, there's no one shoe fits all. Like we were saying before, you cannot give the same 100,000 people the same drugs and expect the same thing. And really what it's doing is it's allowing society to not have to take accountability. It's allowing
Mm,
your family on some levels, depending on what stage you're at, not to take accountability. And
agreed. Totally agree.
and um, and to help that person. You're not helping them, you're just compartmentalizing them, literally and figuratively.
Yeah, I think it's really a strong point too. Several things that you've said, is for me, for the public to understand, like, it really wasn't a choice, like you said. The environment wasn't a choice. You were left to devise your own coping mechanisms. And then you were basically given a life sentence by so-called professionals who, that you were told to believe. So you were given a life sentence of mental illness and instability and an inability to function in the normal realms of society. So basically, we're going to keep you sedated and dumb you down, so to speak, which really enraged me. It really, because it isn't giving you an opportunity to grow, to find your own path, to learn your own strengths, to believe in yourself, to empower yourself, to go above and beyond that sentence. And when adults play along with that sentence, because again, it gives them the permission to not be accountable, or at least not take a larger part into your well-being and your care, then we have an equation for disaster, right? And for you to have come through that, for you to have spent 35, 40 years in those trenches, right? And in and out of mental hospitals, in and out of physical hospitals, because when you came out of the mental hospitals, you didn't want to be on the drugs. So when you went off the drugs, there was this pendulum effect where, you wanted to be clear. And then when you got clear, your body's in this, deprivation of modes. And then you become more suicidal because you realize the reason why you went in there is because it's such a screwed up place, this world. And you remember why you didn't want to participate. But those around you, myself, our mother, some very few dear friends, we're always rooting for you, and we're always holding space for you to know that you are being seen and that you are tremendously loved. um, Maybe we should share about what it is to go in and out of those trenches, and how important it is for others to hold that space for you, and to be unconditional for you, and to be the love that you needed to receive in the world.
Yeah, I think a good place there to start would be, it's difficult when you're receiving mental health care or institutionalized, because they want you to talk about your experience. But when you talk about your experience, you get more labels and more medications. And to me, that was, I could definitely feel my resistance to all of those things. I was very, very resistant to that. And so I stopped talking. And that was like pretty much the opposite effect of what they think happens. They think that if you talk about your experience, you can, get better, but they're not supporting you to get better. They're just giving you more labels and more drugs without actually helping you get through the experience.
They're
And I
using it
think that
against you.
for me, basically, I felt exactly that way, that they were using it against me, and that I was never going to get out of the hospital, and that it kind of reinforced the fact that the drugs were poisoning me, because they weren't. I mean, I knew, my soul could feel that this isn't helping me, and they're not trying to help me. They're trying to subdue me. They're trying to control me and my behavior, because they're not really directly dealing with the issue. And I have to say that back in those days, it was, late 80s, 90s, really when I was, and that era itself, there were a lot of people my age in that were, you know, getting these labels for the first time. And they were kind of recognizing all of this a whole lot, in fact, a lot more than they should have, because it kind of perpetuated the problem of getting kind of bad treatment, you know, um, from the counselors and the hospitals, and the pharmaceutical companies really started making an amazing amount of money off of our generation. It was a really sick cycle. And so, yeah, the going off of the drugs, I did definitely had withdrawal. Um, I threw up every day for 7 years, a few times a day, just from the medications that I was on. And that, of course, has taken its very own significant toll on my body. And so, and it wasn't really, and I didn't think anyone would understand, because you have to think that in my experience, no one had understood up to that point, not just how to deal with what I was experiencing, but how to help me with what I was experiencing, because it just seemed like talking. The only response I really got was, well, maybe you should get your medication changed, or maybe you should go back to the hospital, or, you know, because going through withdrawals is very painful. And you do experience, when you're on those types of drugs, a lot of mental chaos, in and out, on them, off them. And then you've got all the body withdrawals, the physical withdrawals. And it's very dangerous to just stop taking those types of drugs because of the response, the body response. It's very
Sure.
dangerous. But the side effects were extreme in every possible way, which I don't know how anyone could want to take something that would cause side effects to that intensity. Um, I
Well,
was
they threw the
hell
gambit at
on my
you.
face. Yes. And I was hell on my family and my environment. I was literally a extreme, like, imagine a roller coaster on the Himalayas, you know, just so far up and so far down and so far up and so far down. And very, very rarely was there any in between for me. Um, and I mean, I feel grateful that my family never gave up. I mean, you were an amazing cheerleader, an amazing support system. Um, you didn't make me feel very awkward about my experience. You were very just like, okay, okay, well, let's deal with that. Well, okay, let's deal with that. You know, and but understandably so, it's hard to know how to deal with that. Like, what are the steps that someone takes to help someone with this experience that not a lot of people are familiar with, these behaviors that not a lot of people are familiar with? And there is no simple answer. There is no, well, you just need to feel happy. You just need to do things that make you happy. Because to that point, I didn't really know what that was. I didn't even have any ideas like, what does make Sunny happy? You know,
Well, and
what?
that's really important because it's like, that's an important point to make. It's like, so talk therapy doesn't work, medication doesn't work, right? Because it just makes you further detached from participating and less able to be authentic. So, you know, coming to that point of going, well, then what really does matter in life? What really does get you from, you know, what is the eternal chaos of the Himalayan roller coaster to where you are now, right? Like through all the labels, and you've been labeled everything under the sun that they could throw at you. Because again, that was at the beginning of the really the boom of the industry, like you said, which really I watched put you through every, you know, possible label they could, to get more incentives, to give you more drugs. And, you know, it was like you were an experiment for them. You were a it felt like you were being experimented on. And the social work situation, the social workers would change. And you know, it's like you just, when you would find one person that you would open up to, that person would be shifted, or, you know, that, so there's so many holes in the fabric here that it's no, you know, it is a grand mystery that you got out, that you surfaced, right? And so, you know, the ability to get through that gauntlet of 45 years, right, of that, I mean, that's remarkable in its own self. Like, what was it that, you know, it wasn't the drugs, it wasn't the talk therapy, and it wasn't just, you know, you can't just turn a switch and say, just be positive, just think, change the way you're thinking about it. What was it that, you know, for you, that shifted, that created the ability to be more of your authentic self, to let your soul shine through?
Well, strangely, it was acceptance. It was, I think I was 34, actually. I had met a couple who I knew as they're my shamans. They have other people that refer to them that way. Basically, it was a very chance, maybe not so chance encounter. Oregon coast,
Hold
pet
on,
sitting for my boss.
hold on, we lost you at chance. It was a very chance encounter, because I know it's storming where you are. So we've got a little bit of a pause there. So I think we heard that you basically met a couple that, and they became more or less like your shamans, and that you met them on the Oregon coast. Is that true?
Yes,
Okay.
I was, yes, I was pet sitting for my boss. Or no, wait, I was working. There was another lady who I had just met that was pet sitting for my boss on the property. And they called to surprise her. They were her friends. And they wanted to surprise her. So I was going to help them. We made arrangements on the phone. She was not there when they arrived. I was doing some construction work on one of the rooms, and they came around the corner into the yard, and I saw them through the window. And it was literally, when I locked eyes with them, it was like, felt safe. It felt safe. I felt seen, like a knowing that this was going to be different. Like my soul was being seen for what it was, even though I'd never met them. And we immediately sat down on a bench, and he started sharing all of the same experiences that I had had with the other worlds, that I'd never really talked a whole lot about for fear of what would happen. And he made me feel normal in the sense of my experience for the first time in my entire life. The
Mm.
things that he was sharing with me were the things that I was experienced, but not in this world. And so I felt heard and accepted. And he was very open about it. And he was very kind and just matter of factly, this is what happens and this is normal. And it's okay for you to share your experience.
And he had
And
no
so,
idea,
through
like,
sharing that experience, no idea who I was. He had no idea anything about my past at all whatsoever.
and he somehow saw
And for
in you
him to sit
something.
down and just start, yeah, that's exactly how it happened. He somehow looked into my eyes and knew what I was experiencing, and just we didn't really even talk about why he was there. He just sat down and said, "Hello, child," and started
Wow.
sharing very otherworldly experiences that I was like, "Oh my gosh, you've been there, you've seen that." And it was a very powerful moment in my life to not feel so alone, because even kids in the hospital, and they don't share those experiences even with the other people, the other patients. I think it's a very personal and private type of, for me it was, and I really, like I said, didn't meet other people that talked about those particular things. And over the next 10 years, I think it was, I just gradually, I think it was maybe 5 years into our relationship, I was still very unstable, suicidal on and off, decided to go off my medications for good. And after a few years of that, I was still struggling a little bit. And then finally, it was that conversation of, how many times have you tried to kill yourself? How many, why do you think you've been so unsuccessful? Like, basically he was saying, you're a suicidal failure. And don't you think there's a reason for that?
Hmm. That's
You know,
powerful. That's
and
very
so,
powerful.
and he said, you have so much insight. And we started talking a lot about what I had been through and what I had taken from it. So the takeaway, basically, from the experience that I had, and the fact that I could see this same thing that he saw in me in others. And I understood, and I did have a very deep compassion for people who were struggling. And I was able to connect with them even in my own unstableness. And I started to kind of reach out more to people that were struggling, and I could see patterns. I could understand things that I didn't realize I could understand. And it it all made sense to me, but it didn't make sense to a lot of people around me, what they were going through. And so I realized that I had a lot more knowledge and understanding and compassion that I realized. So I kind of had to zoom out and really deeply become the observer of my past. And I think it's important, something that I really truly take to my own heart, is that I really feel like the past, I don't think forgetting the past is very healthy, because we forget our lessons, we forget the knowledge that we have gained. But I also don't think that the past should live inside you, because your heart and your soul are there, and those are very sensitive. Your brain, your systemic soul they're all connected. And I think when you keep the past in the same exact ways, because they act more as triggers. But
Hold
I
on a
think
second.
allowing the past to walk beside you as your teacher, as a reflection.
So we missed a part of that. So you were talking about letting the past, um, be in the past. And then you were saying the heart and the soul live inside of you with the brain. And you said, there's this whole systemic gig going on. And so can you take it from there? Because I feel like this is so important for others to hear.
Yeah. I was saying that the past, you shouldn't try to forget it, because it's a teacher,
Yes.
but you shouldn't allow it to live in, and where all of your emotions are triggered, but that you should let it walk beside you as a reflection, as a trainer, as a teacher, so that we don't forget the lessons and we don't forget the takeaways, but we can safely walk beside it and can gain from those experiences what it had to teach us. I think that's really important, because when you tell someone to forget the past, you're asking them to forget all the lessons they could have taken from that. which to me might be the difference between me becoming that chaotic world that I grew up in, or me choosing to not become that chaotic world.
Very
Because
well said.
I think when we push things down, we push it down, but it's there. When you push something down, it's still there. But when you allow it to walk beside you and you just take one piece at a time and you say, okay, I understand how this is affecting me now because I can see my own behaviors. We have to choose to not live in the past, but to learn from the past. The only way to do that is to reflect upon each and every one of those moments and say, okay, how can I change that kind of to my advantage almost? How can I turn that into something that's useful? I'm not going to say positive, I'm going to say useful, because there is a lot of useful information, be it human nature, being able to recognize different aspects of human nature and character, warning signs, and signs that other people might be experiencing. I've, you know, I've reached into people's lives more than once and said, you're in a very bad situation, but I want to help you get out because I know how hard it is to make those decisions yourself and to do it on your own. And I've pulled people out of very abusive, dysfunctional households altogether, and said, I will be that strong person that stands in front of you while you go get your things. I will support you and I will help you. I will have the moving truck there and I will make sure that nothing happens to you because, our own mother didn't have that in her life, with her husband that was so extremely abusive. She didn't actually have anybody come in and say, I'm going to help you. I'm going to be physically here and I'm going to see you through this very bad situation, because there's such a hold, a psychological hold that abusers have. They have a lot of manipulative powers. And there's just a lot of systems already in place, so that keep people in these situations, a lot of hopelessness, things like that. And so, when you can take a look at your own past and say, what would have made the difference? And then become that thing that makes the difference, or find a way to become that power that makes a difference, not just in their lives or others' lives, but your own life. How can I become the person I needed when I was growing up?
Wow. Yeah. So it went from being in this gauntlet of chaos to finally feeling seen in a safe environment, in a safe scenario where someone was basically speaking your language, right?
Yes.
That was allowing you to feel completely safe in the transparency. And he was the one that was forthgiving of that. He saw it in you, he recognized it in you, and allowed the guards to go down, allowed you to feel like you were actually not crazy, and that other people had experienced the things that you had experienced and had found a way to find balance in this life.
I
Okay.
think we froze up. There we
Okay.
go.
There we go. What was the last thing you remember me saying?
Just acknowledging that he was allowing me to share my experience safely,
Okay.
and accepting what I said for exactly what it was.
and
which
sharing his
was
own
my
version of
reality.
it. Right. Right.
Yes.
So someone who made you feel accepted and relatable, like literally
Yeah.
relatable. He was sharing his own version of something that felt so like to you that you actually felt like there was a genuine connection. And again, this was coming from someone who wasn't necessarily being given a life sentence and labeled and told that they were dysfunctional. So there was hope in a way. There was a message of you're okay. You're actually okay. And not only
Yeah.
that, not only that you're okay, but then he journeyed with you for a significant amount of time as someone of a confidant, and came to a place where he was able to say, you know, don't you think it's kind of interesting that you're kind of a failure at suicide, and could there be a reason why? And getting you to shift your thoughts from, and to recognize from what was self-defeating to kind of self-explorative, and to plant the seed that you may have a purpose, a strength, an ability to do exactly what he did for you for others.
Yeah. He encouraged me to explore and empower the knowledge that I'd been given, because he he didn't judge me, but he did point out, oh, well, he put things in a way that it made sense. Oh, that training that you went through gives you this strength, and that part of your training gave you these tools. You just didn't see them until now.
So he was actually
And
being
so
he was being
go ahead.
supportive and sharing with you that the training of your lifetime of mental illness, and as labeled, was actually, he was calling it something else. He was calling it, a training, in other words, almost on a soul level. He was saying, and not only a training, but that you just weren't being shown the strengths that you had actually acquired by enduring those things, and being able to utilize those and recognize those as strengths within you, those tools now to being able to recognize, to be able to hold space, to be able to transform your demons into something that was demonstrative of compassion. And
Yeah.
right, like, so that's pretty amazing that that was the course that brings you to recognizing what's within you.
Recognizing that I had worth, I had value, I had something that didn't need, you know, um, he acknowledged me, he acknowledged my experience, he accepted me without judgment, and he allowed me to see that you are living in your past, but it's living inside you. But you have to remember that past isn't happening anymore. Only the memories that live inside you are happening. And so you can now choose to step out of that existence and create these, take the tools that it offered you, take all the value that you can, and realize how much you really have. You are in abundance of tools
Beautiful.
and
Love that.
understanding and compassion.
Love that.
And so, yeah. And that basically, you know, it takes time to take those steps and to apply them. And especially when you live in with no self-worth for so long, to really see it. But I think once I started to really recognize and acknowledge, like he said, just my own accomplishments, baby steps of moving forward. Okay, I've been off medications for this long and I've not been put in a hospital. I'm not having, some of these symptoms that are unacceptable to others. And little progression was a positive flex to be able to give myself and say, oh, that's a good thing you've done. You're a good person, you know? And so my self-worth kind of built from there, because I think it's important to know that there's very little to no self-worth in a lot of people who've been abused, which is why they stay in the cycle, because they don't
Absolutely.
understand their self-worth. And so I think that's a huge, huge part, acknowledging, accepting, and integrating what's happened to them, getting them out of living in that past and integrate their strengths that they can take from it.
Which equals worth, right? So for them
Absolutely.
to know their worth. So that is
Mhm.
massive, to know your worth and to believe that you are worthy of love and that you are a source of love and that you have a light within you that no one else has because of what your training was. Like each one of us have a unique training in life. And we're shown by these challenges. I believe that every challenge is a true soul designed opportunity for us to, for the human level of us to see the soul level in us, because it's what we do in those moments. It's what we muster up from within, which is the soul becoming human, like in expressing itself through human form of what it's going to do in response to who this human is going to be in response to, in despite the environment, right? Like I feel like
Exactly.
that's huge, and to know that the value of that choice
Yeah,
has meaning not only to the self but to others.
absolutely. I mean, if you look at the world today, or just over, you know, long periods of time, um, I don't know if I can use this as an example, but the Catch Me If You Can movie was based on a true life story of a simple human being that chose a criminal life pattern because of his upbringing to some degree. But now he's changed his life. He actually works. He worked for the FBI because they saw his talent. Yes, he was a criminal, and yes, he used that for, you know, criminal behaviors and getting away with a lot of things. But they acknowledged his talent. They acknowledged his worth, and they said, you know, you could use this for the good.
You
And
have a
in a
level of
similar, it's a
mastery.
very, yes. And so it's a very, and there's a lot, believe it or not, there's a whole lot of criminals that are now working in to help others. And so, and it's because they understood their self-worth. They weren't surviving on their criminal behaviors, but they were able to see that, you know what? Yeah, I really don't need to be this way. There is something that I can do to make this a positive exchange in the world, you know. And I think that that was that point in me where I don't need to be these labels and hate myself and have no self-worth. I can actually turn that, you know, that over and see my self-worth. And that really, really is a turning point, I think, is that acknowledging that you don't have to be who you were, what you were brought up in. And you may not have had a lot of self-worth in life, but I feel we all live many lives within this one. We're not the same people that we started out as. And I, you know, every so often we all should be growing. But I think in order to truly grow self-worth, acknowledging our truths, acknowledging the hard stuff along with the good stuff. And I spent hours upon hours when I got off medication. I would interact with people, and I was very socially awkward, extremely socially awkward, because I didn't participate a lot in this world until a much later age.
Mhm.
And so I really felt like a newbie in this world. And so I spent probably 8 hours at night. I would lay down, I would close my eyes, and I would take myself through every single moment, every possible moment I could remember of the day, from every conversation, every nuance, every reaction, everything I said. And I would pick it apart and I would say, okay, that person responded a little bit surprised when I said this. So I wonder what were they responding to? What could I have said differently, to try to not feel so awkward, because I had a lot of awkward moments. And that was obviously awkward for them. So I would analyze it and break it down and try something different next time. I would try different things. I would try to soak in as much social activity as an observer to see kind of what was working. And so it was a long process, but at the same time, I was really able to get to know myself. And I
Beautiful.
was really able to choose what behaviors were serving me and what behaviors weren't serving me. And just by watching others, what are their behaviors that are not serving them? Because you make choices from those places, but you truly need to be the observer just to get that choice. And I welcome people to reflect. What do you see when you talk to me? What do you hear? Comfortable, because if you don't share that with me, I may not be aware of it, and I own that truth.
So I may not be aware
So
of
I
it,
really
you said, and then you've been spotty a bit. So I may not be aware of it.
and and I might want to own that truth if it's there.
I know
If
that
that
that was,
resonates,
go ahead.
go ahead.
Well, I know
I
that,
know know. Go ahead.
yeah. Well, I remember a point. I'm remembering a time when you had the courage to be that voice for me. And it was one of the most pivotal conversations I've ever had with anyone, about the effect that I was having on others. And when we're able to receive feedback, we're truly receptive and take it to heart, then we're able to evolve. We're able to make changes from a place where we are intending to have efficiency, effectiveness. We want our what we do share in the world to make the difference that we're wanting to make, right? And so I remember, that happening just between you and I don't know that anyone else could have ever have had that conversation with me. I feel like it was destined to be you coming to me, with that conversation and that same reality check and that same opportunity, that offering of raw, candid feedback. And because it was you, it meant the world to me. And I've had my reign of stubbornness and non-receptivity, right? Like I have had that for sure, but being able to know when someone's coming from their heart and to accept it, no matter how much of a dose of humble pie it is, that's where true change happens, true growth happens. And thank you for not only being that for yourself and going through that process for yourself, but coming to a point where you had the strength to do that for someone else that you loved, for me, because it has literally changed. I remember the day, I remember exactly where I was at, and I remember that conversation, and it was not easy for you to do. And so sometimes, the moral of the story here is, sometimes tough love is the best route, but it still matters how it comes out, how it's delivered. And you did deliver it in such a way that it felt authentically thoughtful and intentionally meant to offer me something that could allow me to be what you knew I wanted to be in the world, but actually be effective being in the world.
That's a really good way of, thank you, because I feel like that was exactly the intention that I had. I mean, you have always been literally a rock and a strength in my world. And you have always had this drive to help others, help themselves. And here, I mean, maybe I was that inspiration because I was such a hard person to help, because, you know, you also, like you said earlier, understood that these things weren't helping me. But like, how far do you have to dig to find out what is going to help this person who's unwilling to help themselves? Because I didn't know how. I didn't. And so, and you know, I read something in a store window once, and it said, words should never fall like rocks, because rocks are painful and people will shield themselves from the rocks. But words should fall like snow. They should land softly and have time to sink in. And it was a pivotal point of how I started communicating the really sensitive, important things in life. And so, and you've always been really good at never raising your voice, always just being very direct with your communication. As adults, I'll say, because you and I, you know, we had our moments as kids, as siblings always do. But your way of communicating has always been very subtle, but very direct. And people do hear you. I mean, you hear things when people aren't yelling at you. You're not thrown into a defensive mode. And so
Well,
that part of communicating.
I've been a very straightforward and kind of raw communicator. I wasn't always as refined as I've been now, like as where I've grown to be now. I had to learn that as well, as like how you deliver it and where the energy, the literal frequency from which it's sourced is being experienced. And that must become the mastery that I achieved to become efficient and effective with what I am all about in this world, which is, you know, a promoter of self-love and self-empowerment and like and personal growth, right? And so, you know, that but I know I've been, you know, raw and abrasive, because some, like, people, it may be a truth, but people just aren't quite ready to swallow it when it's so raw and abrasive, right? And there's a art to being compassionate, right? And empathetic. Like it took me so long to become empathetic, like truly empathetic, truly compassionate, because I was so matter of fact about things. And you know, that wasn't necessarily the effective route. And what I'm hearing is when people feel seen, feel acknowledged, and believe in their own worth, they can become powerhouses in this world by celebrating their strengths and their unique gifts. And that's what ignites me most of all. And that's what you've shown. You've been that transformative demonstration of that. I want to talk a little bit about the passion and dream that you have before we go into the next segment, because I really do feel like it's a beautiful demonstration of your full circle, right? But you have a special vision that I happen to know about, and I'd love to share that with the world, and why it is so important to you.
Okay. Before I jump into that, I just want to say, not even in your defense, but I think that those two things that you mentioned, that you and you got through your survival as well. And so I think that distance that we put between ourselves and pain, it unfortunately overlaps a lot, and it becomes almost a habitual shield that we're not even aware of. And so, and I kind of sensed that kind of early on, you know, but at the same time, you were so much more productive than I was. So I didn't feel like it was something that should be judged, but, and it shouldn't. It's literally just part of our to my dream. My dream is I live on the Oregon coast, and you know, these are considered fishing towns and logging towns. There's a lot of generational families here. It's not a very big place. There's a few small little towns here, and it's very unfortunate to me. I've lived here about 23 years now, and I see this crisis of there not being any positive outlets here for youth, young adults, adults alike. There are bars. There's not a single bowling alley. There's a very small community center in one little town, but it's focused on really young people and teaching them how to garden, which is fantastic, getting them interested in their environment a little bit. It's very hyper focused on feeding them with the food that they grow, which is great. But the teenagers, they really have nothing. The young adults, they the cost of living here is outrageous. The locals cannot afford to live here. And this is a tourist town, so it requires people that's, you know, that are in the service area. But if you can't afford to live here and you don't have any real resources and no real positive outlets, then you're going to start seeing crime. There's a lot of meth use in our area. There's a lot of, there's becoming a lot more homelessness like everywhere. And my dream is to open a rock climbing facility that also facilitates what the things that support that, like, you know, you need to learn how to focus and how to be centered and how to align your body to this type of thing to reach the goals that you might want to reach, because it takes all of these things to pull yourself up that wall, and courage and strength and, you know, all of the things that really are an amazing foundation for the rest of our life. You know, it would be great to have facilitators come in with yoga, alignment, breathing classes, because this community is desperate for some kind of positive life alignment. You know, the jobs here are physically demanding in pretty much every way. They require a lot of patience and understanding with people that, and to be honest, right now, the locals really hate tourists. I mean, you hear it everywhere you go. They can't wait for them to be gone, even though it supports our town, but there's no place for them to live. There's nothing that they can afford. They're struggling every day to be loggers. Fishing is very difficult work. And so it just feels like this community is being held down in so many ways, and there's no lifelines. They're being held under, and there's just no lifelines. We have young kids having children. It's been going on since I've lived here. It's not getting any better. In and out of jail, a lot of DUIs because there's nothing to do but drink and drink underage. I can't, there's countless people that have been lost in, that I've known, that have been lost to drunk driving accidents and overdoses and things like that, because coping is, there's no positive coping mechanisms to be gained here. And
Or
so my
positive
big dream,
outlets.
is to, no, yeah. And to me, that's a part of coping. It's having an outlet, and so I guess to me, the one thing that I could think of that could pull in a lot of different aspects to finding that self-worth. When you make it to the top of that wall and you've done all these different climbs and it's taken you all this time and you just keep getting better and better, you find yourself in those places. You find yourself in those places. You find that self-worth that you can apply to all the rest of the things in your life, and have that positive self-empowerment.
Love it.
And so that was the one thing that I could think of that might encompass a lot of things that we all really desperately need anyway in our life,
So fundamental life
with the
skills
social,
being
and with social.
Go ahead with social.
With this way that society is like wrapping themselves around social media, I'm really concerned that the generations, they're not really going to know who they are. And, there's so much comparing going on, like people comparing themselves to this and this person and that person, and what this person has and what this, there's just, I'm not sure how this generation is going to find their sense of self.
Fair.
By comparing themselves to what they're seeing on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube and online, and what they want to grow up to be. 80% of our youth are saying they want to be influencers, which are people on YouTube influencing the world. And 20% still might want to be doctors and nurses. But when you look at the future in general, when you hear those numbers, I'm very, very concerned. I'm very concerned. And so I feel like we need more of these places where people can get out of that social arena and get in touch, like physically in touch with their world, and find those really important lessons, getting supported from the ground, having somebody down below saying, you can make that next run, you can grab that next one, and the teamwork that it could involve, and just the connectedness. So I think that these places are really a lot more important than we realize, I suppose.
Yeah, I have to agree. And it crossed my mind when you were sharing this vision with me that not only are we supporting the foundational life skills that are necessary, to be able to focus, to be able to set goals, to be able to troubleshoot, to be able to work as a team, to be able to have the courage to strategize, to set milestones, to be able to communicate, right? To be able to calm the body, focus the mind, and achieve something, and to be able to have a space that you can return again to and go again and go again, a safe, healthy place. And then you were talking about what I feel is very innovative is to, put in like a healthy, like vegan juice bar, or having the classes about mindfulness and vocal empowerment. And particularly you were passionate about having like a scholarship program for like high risk teens, or a mentorship program, and those types of things where we're giving them a place to go, maybe where father and child, or parent and child, can come in and do something together. All of those other assets to making this not just a climbing facility, but utilizing it in such a multidimensional way that all empower them to be good climbers, but and people who can know their worth and to achieve, but also just be functional community members. I'm absolutely I love to death. And I feel like the interesting thing is now more than ever, because of the social distancing, we have empty facilities like that we would normally, like movie theaters, right? Like
Mhm.
we have spaces now where, these things could be restructured,
Invented.
yeah, reinvented. And we can be mindful about space and social distancing in the way that we can have certain, like a membership and certain amount of people involved only at a time, so that you can monitor the influx of attendees. There's really, it seems like there's a lot of need for this type of thing, and many communities, but that there's also spaces that we could evolve into these places, and repurpose, so to speak, for the community that it's
Yeah.
in, right? Rather than sitting down and popping popcorn in your mouth and being entertained kind of in one way, you could now entertain the meaning of life and the things and the skills in life that would allow you to really be knowing of what you're made of inside. So thank you for sharing that vision. I really, and I love that you came up with this. Like you just said, this is something that I really want to provide for my community. I feel like that to me is a true sense of someone coming full circle from the tragedy that may have been their life experience into a state of triumph, knowing who they are, and having a vision that could level up the community that they live in, which is all about what Lovelight Speak is all about. It's about returning and becoming a light, becoming a source, becoming a voice for others.
Yeah, I would love to be those words of encouragement coming from the floor. And, when somebody, falls down saying, you know what happens, this is normal. You can get right that voice. I want to be that support. I want to be a point of community service for, youth that have been in trouble. I want them to be able to come there and help out with cleaning, help out with stuff, in turn, be in turn of being able to find the same resource for themselves, and have it turn into a resource for them, so that they can see for themselves, the possibilities and the potentials, other than what they're doing. I really, that is my dream. I'm kind of, I'm still sorting out how to get to that dream, but I'm really hoping that comes together. So
Well, I love it, and thank you for sharing that, and just for revealing that, what's in your heart. So now we're at that segment where you get to pick a couple numbers, and I get to tell you a word, just random, that you don't know, and you get to share with me just whatever comes up for you. Maybe what it has meant to you in life. Yeah, just or maybe an occasion where you felt that it, that you're brought to when you hear the word. But yeah, just something that you feel, whatever organically arises within you when you hear these words. So pick a number.
13.
Spirit.
Spirit. I instantly thought, never let it die. Never let it be squelched. Never let it be held down. Never let anyone take the power of your spirit from you. There are many out there that will try, but it is really important. It's the most important thing that we have, that's free, that comes with our little vessels, that we need to hold dearest. One of the things we need to hold dearest, because it is really, it's a it can make you or break you. So you really need to realize when your spirit is hurting, when your spirit is suffering, when it's being held back, when it's not being allowed to do what naturally feels we need to remember that it's really important that when we start to see that spirit, getting any dimmer or sadder or, defeated even, we need to fight for that. We need to allow that to be exactly what it's there for. We need it to be our drive, our ambition, our focus in a lot of ways, because it is our spirit that really drives a lot of where we go and what we do. And if we allow someone to take that from us, then we lose our self-worth and we lose our control. And we need to remember it's there and to use it as it's meant to be used, not to hurt others, not to control others, not to take from others, and not to be taken and not to be controlled and not to feel pain. So that's what it makes me think of.
Beautiful. Oh, okay. Pick another number.
41.
Woo. Let's see. Purpose.
Purpose. This life, we are given an opportunity the moment we enter it. And we should never take it for granted, because there is a purpose. We should never be taken for granted, because there is a purpose. No matter how poor you are, no matter what your life presents, eventually we have a choice. We all have a choice. No matter what we've been through, we have a choice, and we can become what we were meant to be. We are an acknowledgement to find that purpose. We really do, because it's there. We just have to keep believing that we have a purpose. Believe in yourself and you will find your purpose.
Woo! Girl, you're on fire. Okay, one more. One more.
One more. How about 12?
12. The big picture.
The big picture.
Mhm.
That's funny enough, a more difficult one. I think the big picture is not connecting to every little. It's hard, because when I see the big picture, I'm a little daunted by what's happening in society. I'm a little daunted by how easily people believe in things that may or may not be true. And I feel like it takes us further away from our truths, our own truths. There's so much outer stimulation. And so I think the big picture is to look at the little picture, is to look at what actually matters to you, what actually resonates with you. And believe it or not, it's the little things. The more simple we keep things, the more they apply to ourselves and the worlds around us, the more we can see what the big picture needs to be, and not what everyone portrays it as needs to be. There's just, use your common sense, use your intuition to really feel what's right in this world. And don't allow anybody to tell you what the big picture is. You need to see the big picture from your own perspective.
Woo!
And yeah, I think that's where I see that.
Beautiful. That was so like Buddha Zen, like, reverse psychology, like right in there, but it had so much meaning. I love the way you expressed that. It's in the little things. The big picture is made up of little things, and to know where you stand in that that resonance of what you believe in your heart to be true and necessary and important, and what you resonate, and let that be the navigating force of your true north. Wow. Wow. Awesome. Wow. Good job. So, okay, last question.
Okay.
If you had one message you could give to the world, one thing to share with the world, one thing to tell the world, uh, what would it be? What would you say?
I would say never let your past, never let another person define you. Always know that you have a choice. Always know that if you don't, you soon will. And always know that you're not alone and that judgments are typically made by those who project their fears.
Woo.
And so never give up those thoughts of knowing that something could be different and making that happen.
So rich. Yeah, and you've definitely been the example of that, and I couldn't be more proud of you. I love
No,
you so
thank you.
much. Mhm.
I love you too.
You're like my hero. Like I have a few heroes, but you know, our mother is definitely my biggest hero. You are such. Your story has just, and where you've come is, you know, it's such a triumph that you are my hero as well. And for those who might be inspired to connect with you or reach out to you, to learn more about you, to, you know, to work with you on some level, to gift you in the ability to make your dream and vision come true for this community center rock climbing wall. Just yeah, how would you like to be connected, and you know, like what would be the best way for them to reach you?
My email would probably be the best way to reach me, and maybe the only way to reach me. I'm not I'm not huge into the social media arena for kind of obvious reasons that I've kind of stated, but it's Sun Sky Hill, exactly like you would spell each of those words, all one word, at gmail.com. And if you do reach out, please put love light in the subject, somewhere in the subject, so that I know that you're reaching out through this particular venue. And I will be able to pick it out a lot easier and get back to you a lot sooner, actually. So if you just mention love light in the subject title, that would be amazing.
Aw.
And I just want to say before we disconnect that um, for our upbringing and for, you know, just to put it out there that our mom's upbringing was extraordinary, in the sense that there was a lot of intense abuse as well in her upbringing. And, you know, to some degree, we're all products of our environments until we make those choices to change those things. And and she and you equally are my hero and
Oh,
inspiration, and truly we are all extremely close, especially for having the history that we do. Our family is genuinely very close and very open, very transparent, very loving, very caring. And I want everybody out there to know that there is hope, you know, and communication is very important. Communicating is so important. Where you're at, your needs, and your choosing your level of participation is also very important. So, and I think that we have been so blessed, so incredibly blessed to be as close as we are. And because we chose to communicate and we chose to grow.
amen to that, sis. It's true. Yeah. Thank you for
So
being my
thank you.
life. Oh, thank you for being my lifelong partner, my ride or die, and for having the strength, truly, like for demonstrating the strength to get through all of that shadowland to where you stand now, and for having it in your heart to want to make the world a better place, and being very fearless about making those changes and arriving to a place where you can empower others. Like, full circle, sis. High five, good job. And it's so lovely to have you, and an honor to have you as my sister, and to call you my sister and my best friend and my hero.
Thank you. It's all very likewise. And I thank you for your time and this opportunity to share my story.
Absolutely. And we may have, Sister Sonnee back for another round at another time. And I'll look forward to sharing when that could be. And for now, that's the session of Lovelight Speaks. Thanks to all for watching and to, having given your time. So hopefully you are inspired, and this expands your heart. Love to all. Thank you, sis.
Thank you.